What are some words you'd use to describe Rikers Island?
Hell. Plain and simple, hell.
The 400-acre island in the East River between Queens and Bronx is home to 10,000 inmates, surrounded by a staff of 9,000 officers, which runs on about $860 million a year in budget. In the past, it was home to famous inmates like Tupac Shakur, DMX, and Sid Vicious. And if these guys were alive today, they'd join hands in protesting the disgusting and horrific conditions of Rikers Island. So how does the management withstand the 100,000 admissions per year? And how do the inmates live? Or better yet, how do they survive? In this video, we're taking you inside the creepy lifestyle of Rikers Island. Magistrate Richard Riker was a judge from the 19th century who was pro-slavery. Back then, he abused the Fugitive Slave Act, shipped free blacks to the South, and jailed many of them for years without a hearing or a trial. It's no surprise that Rikers Island was named after him. After his ancestor Abraham Ricken purchased the land, it was soon to become New York's most violent jail complex. This complex hosts mostly pretrial defendants that are either held on bail or remanded in custody. The rest of the people are serving short sentences. Even with pretrial defendants and short-sentence serving prisoners, it costs New York City approximately $556,539 to detain one person for just a year at Rikers Island. In May of 2013, Rikers Island made the list of the 10 worst correctional facilities in the United States, according to reports by Mother Jones magazine. Because of its bad reputation, the then mayor, Bill de Blasio, announced in 2017 his intentions of closing the jail complex at Rikers Island within 10 years, if the city's crime rates stay low and the population at Rikers Island stays low. The next year, the state report suggested that New York State might move to close the facility before that deadline. Then, in October of 2019, the council decided to close down the facility by 2026. Admittedly, after going through this next part, you'd wish it closed immediately. Not many paid attention to its condition. That is, till 2013. A report was released by the federal government accusing the Department of Corrections of failing to protect adolescents, citing a 2.5-year Justice Department investigation. It was revealed that 3 Rikers Island juvenile jails inflicted brutal force on male inmates between 16 and 18 years old. The report revealed that in October of 2012, 44% of the male teenage population was subjected to brute force. One inmate revealed that he was heavily beaten by 4 officers in the hallway for cursing in the middle of a class. Because of this atrocity, half of the 489 teenage inmates reportedly had mental illness, and many were sent to solitary confinement as a punitive measure. They spent about 23 hours to several months there, according to a New York Times report. According to Attorney General Eric Holder, quote, "The extremely high rates of violence and excessive use of solitary confinement for adolescent males uncovered by this investigation are inappropriate and unacceptable." According to the report published on the U.S. Department of Justice's website, there were 1,057 injuries reported, and adolescents were rushed to emergency medical services 459 times in 2013 alone. It was later also revealed in 2012 that the warden and his deputy omitted hundreds of detainee fights from the departmental statistics just to make their jail seem safer. This was supposed to be a wake-up call for them to take action, but they didn't. Fast forward to the expose that revealed the most gruesome pictures inside Rikers Island. In October of 2021, the New York Post obtained exclusive pictures revealing the intake cells of Otis Bantam Correctional Center on Rikers Island. The first image showed as many as 26 men stuffed body to body in single cells, where they were forced to relieve themselves inside plastic bags and take turns sleeping on the floor. According to Senator Jessica Ramos, quote, "One thing no picture can capture is the stench, which is the smell of death." In one image, you could see an inmate curled up on the floor outside of the holding cell because there was nowhere else to put him. And when the elected officials came to visit, the detainees were stashed in a gym. According to a source who spoke to the New York Post, quote, They're not supposed to be there that long. The intake is just a place to process the inmates. They were supposed to move to a larger facility in late September, but according to internal records, at least 256 inmates festered inside the OBCC intake for more than 24 hours due to so-called medical delays and shortage of staff. Inside these chambers, the inmates rarely got access to food because it, quote, routinely ran out, and was sometimes distributed by the detainees rather than actual staff members. No medical care, no toilets, no showers, and no visits. They knew that any inmate would squeal to their families, but the news still made it to civil rights activists. Oh, and this was 2021, the second year of COVID-19. It was then when Abdul Karim, a 42-year-old inmate, passed away due to natural causes. Or at least they thought it was natural causes. Later, the attorney in charge of the criminal defense practice, Tina Luongo, revealed that he died of COVID-19 and claimed that he was denied proper medical care. According to her, quote, Mr. Karim suffered from a host of medical issues for which he required a wheelchair. Adding to this mayhem, during one of the local politicians' visits on September 13, 2021, one inmate tried to commit suicide in front of the group. Senator Jessica Ramos and Assemblymember Jessica Gonzalez Rojas were the first to witness the man, quote, who jumped up on the bars and tried to use a bedsheet to kill himself. Mr. Karim was the 11th death of 2021 alone. But before him, the deaths had a pattern. For example, Wilson Diaz Guzman, age 30, hanged himself in his cell. Javier Velasco, age 30, was found unresponsive with a bedsheet wrapped around his neck. Brandon Rodriguez, age 25, was found hanging in a shower in an intake area. Segunda Guapa, age 57, was found dead, and the Department of Correction described it as a suspected suicide. Do you see the problem? A group of state lawmakers, city officials, and public defenders called for a slate of actions to be taken by the politicians in New York City, which led to the infamous Rikers lawsuits. First up was Sean McDermott, age 30, who was napping on the floor of a holding cell in the Anna M. Cross Center on November 27, 2019. A fellow inmate named Jorge Gutierrez started attacking him and slammed his head 185 times into a metal railing. He spent 9 days in intensive care, followed by 10 more days in the hospital. His left ear was partially torn off, and he had deep gashes and broken facial bones. Want to know the crazy part? During the assault, the correction staff did nothing. McDermott's lawyers filed suit against the 3 correction officers and up to 10 correction department staffers on civil rights and negligence grounds, alleging that they failed to intervene in the attack. In March of 2022, the city paid $9.2 million to the former Rikers Island detainee, which is believed to be among the largest ever paid to one plaintiff. Ironically, all 3 officers involved who ignored the attack remain on the job. Now, you remember the number of inmates lying in the OBCC area, right? It was now time for compensation. Meet James Lynch of Brooklyn, who was sent to Rikers Island in 2017 on charges not specified in court papers. After the Bronx Freedom Fund put up $500 for Lynch's release at 3:56 p.m. on March 29, 2017, he was waiting to be escorted out. Around 4 hours later, Rikers staff told him to pack his things because he was to be freed. Because of that, he gave away his bedding to other inmates, seeing as he wouldn't need it. But at around 11 p.m., no Rikers staff came to free him, and he had to scramble to get his bedding back. At 5 a.m. on March 30th, he left a message for his daughter asking her to call his lawyer because he feared missing a court hearing in Brooklyn. He was finally escorted to the housing unit around 9 a.m., but even that wasn't the end. According to the complaint, quote, he was brought to the intake area where he was held in a cell for several additional hours. He was finally released at 2:40 p.m., almost 23 hours after his bail. Just like Lynch, there are more than 94,000 instances where detainees were held for too long. New York City agreed to pay out $3,500 to anyone detained between October of 2014 and October of 2022 for longer than 3 hours. According to the papers filed in Manhattan federal court, New York City has to pay out $300 million to people wrongly detained on Rikers Island. Despite the lawsuit, inmates at Rikers Island continue to suffer, and many fail to speak up against the authorities due to PTSD. Although many public defenders and civil rights activists are at work, some experiences just stay behind bars. What do you think can be done to fix this creepy lifestyle of Rikers Island? Be sure to tell us in the comment section below. Thanks for watching.